Hey, this is the Salty Seaman, Gabriel Owens, aka Recharge, giving my review of the G1 Season 1 episode Divide and Conquer. Very interesting episode here. Gives us a few beats that would be used on forward, and a few that seem to disappear after this one. Number one, this is a fairly traumatic episode for a kid. This is one of the first episodes where we really see a Transformer really get the shit kicked out of them. And it happens to be Optimus Prime, who would make a habit of it through the series. City of Steel, he's taken apart. Of course, in the movie, he dies in a pretty brutal battle. And then Dark Awakening in Season 3 is, probably the worst offender. But they sure did like really pushing the limits. It's like, okay, these are robots. We can be a little gorier, quote unquote, than like, say, a show like G.I. Joe. And it seems to be Prime takes the worst beatings of it, being the most prominent character. But yeah, this basic synopsis of the episode: the Decepticon Seekers are trying to rob a munitions depot. Prime is the closest Autobot nearby. He goes to face them alone, gets the crap kicked out of him, and has to limp back to Autobot headquarters late to get repairs. And another scene of they loved sprinkling in mechanical and computing terms because they're robots at sci-fi. Sometimes they're very random. It's like there's one part where Ratchet's working on Optimus and he's like, I don't even know how his hydraulic systems are staying together. Like, his hydraulics are important here, not him losing his life. So I think sometimes they just like to throw out terms that just sounded kind of robotic-y, mechanical, or the like. But once again, we see the Autobot headquarters having very poor security, as Laserbeak just and Ravage seem to be able to go in and out as they please. In this case, Laserbeak comes in to try to finish the job on Prime while he's open on the medical table, and ends up damaging his Cosmotron, which apparently is a very important piece of technobabble to keep Transformers alive, even though we never hear about it again. Also raises turns out they can only get one more part, and it's at Wheeljack's lab back on Cybertron, which of course raises the question, what if another Autobot gets his Cosmotron damaged in a battle? How do they build the Dinobots without Cosmotrons? It's such a weird part, but it's apparently vital. Is it a part only Prime has? It's hard to tell, but it's the MacGuffin of the plot. They have to get back to Cybertron, get to Wheeljack's workshop, and save Optimus Prime's life. But yeah, it's typical fetch quest, but we get to see Cybertron. It's one of those rare episodes that we get to go back before Season 2. We'd see a lot more of it, definitely Season 3. But here in Season 1, this is a rare look, and it's pretty typical. We go to Shockwave's HQ. They run through and head to Wheeljack's workshop. Unfortunately, they're met by 3 Seeker modes. Just a variant of colors on the regular Seekers, but they would later become canon more into the series later. They would all get names, including Acid Storm, who is kind of sort of named in here, depending on how you look at Bumblebee's line. But regardless, they've all received toys and names now, even though they're just a one episode kind of off shoot. And of course, it's always fun seeing the pyramid shapes of the Seekers from the first episode. It's also very apparent Megatron has a camera outside of Wheeljack's workshop, because while they're being battered by the acid rain, like, Megatron is just idly watching it on the big screen, which I thought, wow, okay, he's just one of those powers that Decepticons and sometimes the Autobots seem to have that just kind of disappear afterwards for one episode. But pretty funny watching Megatron watch this on his apparent direct camera right outside Wheeljack's workshop in Iacon. And then one of the Autobots are getting their asses kicked. Like, their security is obviously very terrible. Also, this is an episode with Blue Streak, kind of prominently one of the Autobots that's on the various missions they go out on. I don't even remember him being in this episode. I think I might have assumed it was Prowl, or he looks very much like Prowl, just slightly different colors, of course. And it wasn't prominently displayed, probably for that reason. So, interesting seeing him here. He's also voiced by Casey Kasem, but he's just not seen a lot. But he basically just sounds like Teletran 1. Another interesting bit from the old fandom, or people who don't remember it so well, people always like question, like whether Ravage was a cat or a dog, which I just find incredibly crazy because he obviously looks like a robotic Black Panther, and he's referred to as a cat of some sort several times, including this episode where Spike calls him a bad kitty. So, yeah, that's one of the stupidest arguments I've heard from people barely remembering the early Transformers. And one last note I noticed at the end when, of course, Prime makes his recovery and he comes back, the Autobots are getting their butts kicked on the battlefield, and Prime finally returns. He got his new part, looking brand spanking new, and challenges Megatron to a one-on-one battle, and there's this kind of... seems to be there's some kind of battle code for Cybertron that we get hints of here and later in Heavy Metal War. And some of the other fiction would kind of touch on it. The comics established there was a gladiatorial combat in the past. Megatron was a champion of that. And that little idea thread is kind of carried on. But so this show actually touched on it too, although we don't see much of it after Heavy Metal War. And I don't know how this challenge differs from that challenge, but somehow it does. Or the video game challenge from the comics if you want to go there. But a bit of Transformer lore we don't see a lot of, these rules for engaging in combat, which I think is a pretty interesting idea. But yeah, that's all Seaman has to say about good old Divide and Conquer. Solid first season up with some interesting issues, especially going forward with the series.